All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to American Advocates. It's been a slow news week cycle so far. Not much going on here, and in some ways, that's almost symbolic of what's going on here with the Trump administration overall. In all honesty, things are slowing down now. The midterms are upon us, and in all honesty, all of the promises that Trump seems to have made on his campaign trail, and some of the promises that he was at least starting to deliver on last year, have seemingly come to an end. Just like with the news cycle, everything coming to a grinding halt, it seems. This administration now is coming to a grinding halt. And we've seen stuff like that happening with mass deportations and immigration, for instance, pulling out Greg Bovino from Minnesota and relocating him back to his home state of California for him to do basically nothing and essentially for him to be forced into retirement. Tom Homan now, the PR guy entering that state and claiming a victory in that state when we know for a fact that they only managed to deport at most 5,500 illegal immigrants out of Minnesota, and now they're pulling out. And Minnesota, by far, must have way more than 5,500 illegal immigrants in that state. Nevertheless, it's victory. We got done what we needed to. On to the next state, they claim. And so now, no more mass deportations, all of that jazz. It's all coming to an end, all right in front of our very eyes. And so what I want to cover today is basically the only newsworthy stories out there, two of them. One regarding Hillary Clinton and a BBC interview that she just did, I guess, as well as the fact that she will be testifying along with her husband, Bill, before Congress. Hillary will be doing so February 26th. Bill will be doing so February 27th. And they're going to weaponize this disastrous Epstein Files release against Trump and against the Republicans, all while President Donald Trump seems to be content to cuck himself for these elites and for the people that he calls his friends, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I'll be covering a little bit later after we discuss Hillary Clinton here. But the whole overwhelming point of this episode tonight, the whole overwhelming message of everything that's been going on in politics currently is that essentially the Republicans have lost their moral superiority. The same moral superiority that they finally seemed to be getting a grasp on around this time last year when Trump was voted into office and when Trump immediately got to work fulfilling his campaign promises that the majority of Americans, without a doubt, actually want to happen. But now that that's coming to an end, and now that we've been witnessing this disastrous handling of the Epstein Files, and I'll be covering the Israel and Iran heating up tensions that's going on right now as well a little bit later. Now that all of this is happening, it's all going against the promises. It's all a PR nightmare for the Trump administration and for overall the GOP as a whole. And so Hillary Clinton's BBC interview discussing the fact that she's going to be testifying in front of a House committee, before, Congress essentially. She said basically that she believes Trump is complicit in a ongoing Epstein Files cover-up. She says that they all need to be released, all of the files. And the sad thing about this is she's right. Trump and his administration are complicit in an ongoing cover-up of the Epstein Files. And how do we know this? Because if you have a set of working eyes, or even if you're blind and you have somebody else with a set of working eyes explaining it all to you and reading out news articles to you and informing you of what's happening, if you listen to YouTube without working eyes and hear anything at all, then you know for a fact at this point that this Trump administration is in fact complicit in an Epstein Files cover-up. The fact of the matter is this. The Epstein Files Transparency Act had to be signed into law by President Donald Trump forcefully, all just to get these Epstein Files released. And now this DOJ, headed by Pam Bondi, has broken that law, that congressional law that was signed into law and into effect by Trump himself. They've broken that law because the law had mandated that they released all of the files unredacted with only the victims' names redacted, and this Epstein Files Transparency Act basically wrote it into law that they had to be released within 30 days. It's now been over 60 days, and we've only gotten half of the files, and we've had major redactions that don't belong, with very co-conspirators and perpetrators' names being redacted. All the while, many of the victims' names have been released seemingly intentionally unredacted. to essentially punish the victims for ever daring to speak out to begin with against these rich, powerful elites, without whom apparently, according to this administration, and according to people like Speaker Mike Johnson, the world and all of its economic systems and governmental systems would collapse if they had to face consequences for their actions with Jeffrey Epstein. God forbid the system gets burnt down to ashes and has to be rebuilt correctly by the people. And so she's right. And that's the sad reality of this. And the fact of the matter is this: Hillary Clinton and her testimony, Bill Clinton and his testimony even, will be weaponized against President Donald Trump, successfully so, and the messaging will hold up all this year as this administration continues to botch the Epstein Files release, continues with their PR nightmare atrocities centered around Epstein, and as the topic becomes weaponized now against the GOP for midterm election purposes. All of this, of course, could have been avoided simply by the Trump administration doing the right thing, letting the truth have its day, and releasing everything. And doing so before an act of Congress was needed to achieve that. Because Republicans, with their copium, these MAGA imbeciles out here, right? Because I'm socially conservative and fiscally conservative. But I look down on the MAGA filth out there that literally hails Trump as their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, essentially, which he's anything but. And they look up to this man, and they literally view the Epstein Files through the lens of it hurting Trump. So especially boomers, but MAGA conservative sycophants in general will swear that, well, Trump's the only reason the files are being released, and he signed the law into act. He signed it because he had to. Do you really think that man was going to sit on that desk after an act of Congress that we saw occur where everybody in Congress, save for one congressman, voted in favor of the Files Transparency Act? Would he veto that? Do you know how much more of a disaster that would have been? Trump was forced into this. He had no choice. And so here we are now, Trump fighting it every step of the way, his DOJ covering it up in a crooked fashion. It is a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. And it's not getting better, because now we've only gotten half of the files with major redactions that shouldn't be there, while the victims' names have been left exposed. And on top of that, we're now heading into midterms. This topic shouldn't even have needed to be discussed this year. If the GOP was serious about winning, if they were serious about changing America, if the GOP was serious about maintaining power and using power effectively, we'd be already moved on from Epstein. And the only way we'd still be talking about it, if this GOP was serious and was actually the morally upright party that they want so badly to be, the only way we'd be discussing it currently is because there would be investigations happening, and at this point there should be prosecutions happening with the threat of capital punishment. You know, I preached the other day how much I love a candidate like James Fishback rising up. If you're not a Floridian, or, you know, you don't know the name yet, James Fishback has essentially promised that if he becomes governor of Florida, that he will use his governor powers in Florida, where a lot of these Epstein crimes were committed, and he will use that to prosecute the names on the list. And there will be investigations and prosecutions, and he's going to bring back public executions for anybody who's found absolutely guilty in the files as a co-conspirator who harmed children. One of the most likable aspects about James Fishback, in fact, is this. On top of that, he also wants to go after the people who are trying to cover this up. James Fishback is running as a massive America First conservative, and I love literally almost everything that he says. So that's what we really need, and we're not going to get that. Instead, we have President Trump saying, oh, well, you know, it's a shame they're going after Bill. He always treated me so nicely, and, you know, Bill's a good friend, and he always had great things to say about me. And so you MAGA sycophant cucks, like some of the ones in my chat here who are saying I have TDS, I voted for Trump, okay? I want Trump to do good. Trump's not going far enough is the problem. You know, I don't tolerate bullshit from liberals in this chat who say, oh, don't you see he's a con man? Or you were fooled again. No, I wasn't fooled. I voted for Trump because of everything he campaigned on. Now the problem is he's not doing it anymore. And worse yet, he's not taking it far enough. So don't call me a TDSer down there. I voted for Trump happily so. Now I realize we need someone 10 times more extreme than Trump. We need someone who's way further right than Trump is. Trump is a 90s Democrat. That's really the problem here. He's soft, he's a boomer, and he's a cucklord. And that's the problem. And so what we're seeing is the Democrats leveraging all this power that they really shouldn't have, and they're using it. You're a radical then, says Charlie Bester. God, can you imagine, Chad, can you imagine sounding as big of a pussy as Charlie Bester? You're a radical then. You're a radical. Can you imagine being that much of a pussy? Your wife's vagina must be like sandpaper every time you go to sleep next to her at night when you sound that pathetic. If you even are a man. The way you spell Charl. Yeah, maybe you're a woman. That would at least explain it a little bit better. I'm going to assume you're a woman. I'm assuming your gender, and I'm assuming you're a female, Charles Bester. TDS or radical, no in between. Yeah, exactly. God forbid I criticize their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, right? God forbid I do that. Even though I voted for the guy and I'm literally socially and fiscally conservative. It's always the boomers. It's always the old people. They're like, how dare you not toe the party line? You can't ever criticize the right-wing party if you're a Republican. That's how Democrats win. You know how Democrats win? Democrats win when Republicans don't live up to their name, when they don't conserve shit like we've been seeing over the last 5 decades, when they literally just capitulate to Democrats and submit constantly to Democrats' tyrannical rule and Democrat ideology. That's how Republicans lose and Democrats win. That's why I'm so furious. You're a radical, bro. Goodness. Unreal. Hey, man, I'll link you to some TRT clinics after this stream. You really need some testosterone replacement therapy, it sounds. Now, back to the point. Hillary Clinton in this BBC interview, literally just flaunting it out there that she says, oh, this administration needs to release all the files. Only half of them have been released, if that. Reports are now coming in that we haven't even gotten half. Pam Bondi has attempted to release just a list of every name where she's basically summarized the files as a whole and said, here's the list of everybody involved. Okay, that's good enough, right? No, all of the files released. Unredacted except for the victims, and victims are not the ones who were blackmailed for their disgusting, depraved acts against underage girls. The victims are the women that were involved. That's it. That's the only redaction. I don't want to hear this DOJ. Well, the victims are also the blackmailed ones. They haven't said that, but that's kind of how they treat it, which is why Les Wexner's name, for instance, was unredacted on some of the lists. So Hillary Clinton goes on to say, Trump's name, this is the ironic part and hypocritical part of the Clintons, by the way. That's what's even more funny about this. She goes on to say, Trump's name is mentioned in the file thousands of times, even possibly 1 million times, according to rumored reports. And we can't confirm that because we don't have all the files yet. This DOJ, this disgusting DOJ led by that incompetent bitch, Pam Bondi, who needs to be fired. That's a man's position that a woman is holding, right? And so this incompetent bitch, Pam Bondi, who's letting her assistant AG, Todd Blanche, basically run the show so she can throw him under the bus later when prosecutions come her way via Democrats in power, they're sitting on these files. They're refusing to release them. They're violating congressional law at this point. And I do hope, by the way, that Pam Bondi goes to prison for 30 years after this administration's done. I hope her life is annihilated and ruined. And I'll vote for anybody who promises that. But the fact of the matter is, the ironic and hypocritical part of Hillary Clinton saying this is the Clintons' names are also mentioned 1,000 or more times in the Epstein Files as well. And so here's Hillary saying, well, Trump's name is mentioned thousands or possibly 1 million times in the files. He's covering this up. He's hiding something. What is Trump hiding? It's like, bitch, you and your husband are mentioned in those files collectively thousands of times as well. She then goes on to say and even point that out essentially, and she says, well, we're not guilty of anything, though. It's like, what the fuck? And this is the problem. This is the problem when you have these conservative cucks in office who have this DOJ sitting there toothless, not going after anybody. No deep state arrests. Where are those deep state arrests? Hey, Cucklord Charles Bester, you conservative little cuck. Where are those deep state arrests, huh? Oh, good cases take time. Do they? When are they coming then, do you think? Hey, Charles Bester, where's that wall that Trump promised in his first term? Where's that wall? Did we ever get that wall? The wall that literally would only cost under $17 billion. We just tried to buy Greenland, which I support, for $750 billion, by the way. I would have loved that. We're not going to get that either because Trump cucked out on that. But if we can throw around that kind of cash, don't you think a $17 billion Southern Wall project would have been built by now? Where's that wall? Everyone forgets Trump is associated with that border wall. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, look at the deflections. He can't even answer. Am I shattering your world, you little cuck bitch, Charles Bester? Am I ruining your little fantasy land? You know, is that what's going on? Am I making you want to tear down that poster, that life-size poster of Donald Trump in your bedroom? Oh, you're going to have a hard time fapping to the orange savior this time, aren't you? Yeah. Yep, no answers. You can't answer it. You literally can't answer it. I'm not even going to dignify reading your chats because you're swine. You're so far beneath me. You don't even deserve to have your chats read out. How does that make you feel, Charles Bester? You're powerless here in this stream. I have the voice. And you know what's even better? My voice is the truth, and that's why it bothers you so much. Look at you. That's such a shame. It's such a shame that people like you look at I'll show that one. He says, "Suck it, loser." I'll read that one because it's funny. It's funny how desperate and how pathetic the MAGA sycophant cheerleaders sound. And like I said, I voted for Trump, and I hope he turns this around. I want a better economy. I want him to live up to his promises. I voted for him based off of how he campaigned. You know, Trump in a lot of ways in MAGA was the Hail Mary of this country. But the unfortunate reality is, though the wide receiver caught that Hail Mary, we're not going to score the touchdown with this administration. It's going to take someone else to rise up to finish the job. Someone young and strong, not this 80-year-old boomer who's out of touch with everything. You know, the thing with Trump is, I just said this to my dad yesterday. You can watch Trump in office and you can easily see why he became both a billionaire and so successful, and also why he went bankrupt 6 times. You can see all of that inside of how he acts as the president. You know what I mean? So now Chrissy Kirk says, be patient. Patience for me was I gave Bondi until August to get deep state arrest going, or at least a prosecution. Nothing. Okay, you have to come to terms with reality now. And the reality is this administration is not serious, especially the DOJ. We're not getting justice. Okay, and the efforts that they did put forth towards achieving justice, some of these people, James Comey, for instance, nothing occurred. The deadline almost ran out. It took Trump ranting and raging on Truth Social at Pam Bondi in order for her to even try anything. And all we got was Comey sneaking into the side entrance of a courthouse, pleading not guilty and leaving. Letitia James, Pam Bondi, you can't say this for sure, so I have to say this, I have to put this disclaimer on, obviously, but I think Pam Bondi intentionally sabotaged Letitia James's investigation and hearing. She appointed Lindsay Halligan incorrectly, and it seems like that was intentional to me. Now, of course, they're going to say that's an accident, but what kind of fucking U.S. Attorney General, who has Florida State Attorney General experience already, incorrectly appoints a prosecutor like Lindsay Halligan in the case, and ultimately gets the Letitia James mortgage case for fraud case thrown out? It's all done alongside Comey. Not to mention, what kind of Attorney General fails to get an indictment from a grand jury twice in 1 week? Well, Pam Bondi does. On top of that, the worst thing about it is back in 2016, there were 150,000 different grand jury indictments made. And out of all those grand jury hearings and indictments, only 6 of them were failures to indict. Only 6. It's borderline impossible to not have a grand jury indict someone. There's the saying you can indict a ham sandwich using a grand jury. And here's Pam Bondi twice in 1 week, failing to indict Letitia James. And I'll tell you this, I've looked at the mortgage fraud papers centered around Letitia James. It's only alleged guilt. I have to say that, of course, innocent until proven guilty. But when you read those papers, it's very in your face, the fact that it was very likely mortgage fraud. So it should have been an easy one. But the fact of the matter is, here we are. Everyone's just pretending. Like you have the little bitch down there, Charles Bester. And I guarantee you, he goes around saying, well, Trump's playing 5D chess, and it's not my problem or Trump's problem that you can't see how he's just manipulating everyone so flawlessly. By this time next year, that's when you're going to see the results. But the funny thing is, that's what he was saying this time last year about how it should have been happening already this year. They always say that. Well, give it a year and you'll see. Give it a year and you'll see. Trust the plan, Patriot. Well, I'm done trusting the plan. I'm going to start believing my eyes, okay? You can disregard your lying eyes. You can buy into that, but I know what I see, what I hear, and what I'm seeing and hearing is nothing good. So, where was I? I'll take a look at chat again because let's see what's going on here. We got. Oh, by the way, be sure to like the stream if you haven't already, and subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. Definitely like the stream though; it helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. But we're gonna move on to a couple things here with Hillary Clinton. I want to cover a few points here. In fact, dive into the whole Republicans losing moral superiority and why that's happening. And I'm going to go over briefly what's happened in just this first year of Trump's second term alone to point that out. Oh, God. Come on now with the QAnon shit. Please tell me you don't believe that. Pam Bondi missing that grand jury is hey 2009 lifeguard, welcome, glad to have you, man. And yes, her missing the grand jury indictment twice in 1 week is honestly absurd. If this was the Democrats using their DOJ, several of Trump's former administrative personnel would have already had to resign formally from any positions they held, and they'd be already in prison. And how do we know that? Because we saw it during Biden's term. We saw all of that in less than a year in some scenarios under Biden. Okay, so that's a real DOJ for you under Merrick Garland, right? That's what a real DOJ looks like. Even if it was all crony, even if it was all full of cronies and corrupt, that's how a real DOJ operates. It gets results. You idiots down there that buy into this MAGA shit at this point, you're going to be so embarrassed and humiliated and disappointed. And come midterms, I'm going to be here to laugh at all of you when the blue wave sweeps over this nation, and rightfully so. The Republicans don't even deserve power. And I'm going to do my part to ensure they lose everything in the midterms. I'm going to sit on my ass during the I won't vote Democrat because they're here to replace Americans and they despise a white American Christian like myself. So there's no way I'll, in good conscience, vote Democrat, but I'm certainly not voting Republican. The only way I would vote would be for James Fishback, and because I love him. Or if more candidates rise up like James Fishback at the local level, then perhaps that's what I'll vote for. But James Fishback is the only good current political figure in this country. Thomas Massie, of course, I like to a decent degree, but I don't live in Kentucky. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that, and I want to watch them lose, and I want to watch impeachments and prosecute. I want to watch it all crumble at this point. I'm done with this administration. I'm done with conservative cucklords. I'm done with boomer politics. I'm done with all of it. I'm ready for something fresh and new, and that's going to come in the form of people like James Fishback, or if you haven't seen the viral video now that's gotten pretty much 40 million views on X, Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain Party. That's what we need here in America. And it's a shame because the rest of the world at first looked at MAGA last year and they were all joking about making their country great again. So MAGA was like the chieftain kind of coalition that inspired the whole world, it seemed, at one point. But now, as an American, I look at the Restore Britain Party and Rupert Lowe and I say, man, we need something like that here in America. And you'll notice the difference when you listen to him. The difference between him and Trump, because Trump stands for a lot of what Rupert Lowe says about Britain, some of the same policies. But the difference is actually real here. Rupert Lowe grew up on a farm, and he didn't become a billionaire. And not that a billionaire makes you evil, but he's not a billionaire. He grew up on a farm, and on top of it, Rupert Lowe has conviction in what he says. Rupert Lowe believes in Christ. He believes in the Lord. He wants to restore Britain to a Christian country, ban the burqa, ban halal and kosher slaughter. He wants to ban the Muslim prayer and practice. He wants to utterly change his country again. And that's the difference. Trump doesn't have any ideology. Trump wanders. Trump is a populist very strictly. And that's the real problem, in all honesty. Trump doesn't have conviction. Trump has good instincts and oftentimes will get on the right path, which gives us a lot of hope. But the reason why we see him chicken out, they say all the time, is because there's no follow through, and there's no follow through because, in all honesty, Trump doesn't fully believe anything. He only goes for what's popular. All of you losers that are now coming out of the woodwork, doing these live videos, do you honestly think you make a difference? Yes, I do. I believe I'm a fundamental part of society, and that's only going to increase over time as my power, wealth, and influence grows throughout my adult life. On top of that, individually, no, you could look at this stream and you could say, the best live stream I've had so far, I've had over 500 consecutive viewers at once, and it finished with like 15,000 views. This is also a new channel. I'm not even a year in yet. I started posting March 11th of last year. So this channel is going to continue to grow, and when it does, the messaging will compound, obviously. But more importantly, this messaging will compound with other people who are starting to speak the way I do, especially younger people. We need more men under age 40 or 45 to hear messaging like this and to get behind something real in this country. So yeah, I do make a difference, actually. Now, what I would ask you is, you, unapologetically Monica, first of all, as a woman, really, I mean, what are you even trying to lecture me on? Okay, as a woman, know your role and shut your mouth. First, that's first and foremost. Okay, but then secondly, do you really think your chat in this stream will make any difference as well? If what I'm doing won't help, certainly what you're doing will help even less, right? Now, hopefully you have children that you can go attend to and a husband that you can make a sandwich for work for tomorrow. And that's what I would recommend you go do. You're not really serving your actual God-given purpose by being in my chat talking so much shit. In fact, you're serving more of a Jezebel-like purpose, and we all know how Jezebel was treated in the Bible. So please, actually, it's time for you to log off. Go take care of your husband, offer him a massage, put the kids to bed, and then give your husband a good fucking for once, because I'm sure he deserves it, okay? Send him to work tomorrow happy, with a packed lunch and a kiss on the cheek and a smile and a thank you, okay? That's my recommendation to you, Monica. That's how you make a difference in this world as a woman. All right. Yes, it will continue to grow. See, exactly, 2009 lifeguard. Yep, absolutely. Christopher says, I found your twin. I get accused of looking like a lot of different people. What do you think of the cuts to SNAP and Medicaid? I'm all for that, always. That's something that I love. I believe, honestly, the cuts to SNAP make the most sense, by the way. Like, people, if you've ever worked at a convenience store, I never have, but I have a couple of friends that have, and they'll tell you all the time, the most disgusting fat-ass people will walk in with food stamps to buy 7-Eleven slushies and big gulps. And that's what they'll blow their EBT on. That's disgusting. When you're on EBT, you should be so limited that you have no choice but to be in the best shape of your life because of your diet being cleaned up for you. You should only be able to buy meat, dairy, eggs, you should only be able to buy what's on the perimeter of the store. No Chips Ahoy cookies, no cereal. Okay, that's for people with money. And if you're that broke, the last thing you need to be focusing on is creature comforts. You need to be focusing on getting a job with a livable wage where you can then afford to gain a little weight and eat the food you like. But you shouldn't, you should be able to buy a few things down the regular aisles. I'm talking seasoning. I'm talking, stuff like that. Not any of the disgusting, bad for you foods. Certainly not fast food like you can in California. You can buy McDonald's on EBT. That's just so unacceptable. So I'm all for it. Medicaid as well. The fact of the matter is that one's more sensitive to some people, but I'm here to tell you I don't give a shit about the sick, poor people. Not when it comes to the fact that they're a drain on our society. And I'm not for socialism, which is what Medicaid really is. Medicaid is forced socialism. Even Medicare, to some extent, is forced socialism. And I'm not really for those programs. Part of being an adult is being responsible, all right? I went through a major surgery 2.5 years ago, and I paid for it out of pocket. I went into debt for a little bit, but all squared away. I took care of it. I had insurance, I had a job, etc. I didn't need Medicaid. So I'm all for it. Those programs are a drain on society. Man, you're such a douchebag, says Obey My Dog. Be offended then, bitch. What an ignorant knobhead. Are you from Britain? How many teeth do you have in your mouth currently? Homeless cosmonaut. You should be vibing with me. I always get accused of being homeless for doing these streams in my car. I'm torn on that one. I grew up poor. We were frequently on food stamps, and it was the only candy I really ever got. Dude, listen, you can say that, and you can come from a place of understanding. It doesn't justify it, though. It just doesn't. The fact of the matter is this. If you're poor, then you have to be eating less by default. You don't get to be poor and eat lobster dinners. You don't get to be poor and get a pizza delivered to your house. You don't get to be poor. Like, why can you do EBT on Instacart? You're poor. You're fucking poor. Okay? You can't afford delivery. So get your ass up off your chair and go to the grocery store. And try not to use the elderly scooters because you're 300 pounds and you have to waddle. Okay? Lose some weight, buy healthy foods, and then you won't starve. No offense, 2009 lifeguard, and I know as a kid it's a different story to some degree. It's like your parents wanted to protect your innocence and give you that fun kid kind of life. But when you're poor, you don't get that privilege. The privilege is you live in America, and being poor in America is a blessing compared to being poor anywhere else. I know that's a hard-ass stance, but that's my stance on it, Like, there's nothing wrong. First of all, candy's bad for you, Do I have to do my RFK Jr. use 2009 lifeguard? Honestly, your parents shouldn't have been giving you candy. I'm surprised you have any teeth left. So it's like, that's my stance on it. I mean, in all honesty, I went through a phase in my childhood where my dad was laid off from his job and we were poor. And, they had saved up money. We never had to go on benefits. But there was certainly, I noticed it with the dinners for a little while. It is what it is. It builds character. Now, back on track here. I want to get back to the topic of the Republicans losing their moral superiority. The moral superiority that it looked like they were finally achieving and claiming as theirs this time last year. And really what I wrote down is the Republicans have lost this time last year. We had it all. I mean, in all honesty, those first 2 months of this Trump administration were amazing. We had the borders shut down. Within 3 months, we were at zero border issues, or at least reportedly zero. The point is, it was low. Around this time last year, we had the mass deportations going into effect. Trump was fulfilling the campaign promises. One of the ones I really wanted to point out around this time last year, we had Elon Musk and Doge combing through our institutions to expose waste, fraud, and corruption and eliminate it. By the way, what was so unusual about Trump was how popular he was with the youth, especially the under 30 crowd, but also the under 40, under 45 crowd as well. And the reason why he was so popular in large part is because he was at least apparently anti-establishment. And so you had Elon Musk and Doge combing through for waste, fraud, and corruption, and he was never more popular with the youth. At one point, in certain youth demographics, especially with men, he was achieving over 60% popularity. That is unheard of for a Republican candidate. Unheard of. But what happens? Well, Elon Musk is apparently, it seems, ousted from the position. And then on top of it, Doge is pretty much non-existent now. And I'm going to get to that in 1 second, because the fact of the matter is, Doge, I view as a second form of a sort of cover-up by this Trump administration. But on top of that, we had Epstein at first. At least the promise of Epstein was floating in the air. Around this time last year, we hadn't been disappointed yet by the administration. Pam Bondi couldn't have let us down. She was just taking her position. And so we had the promise of Epstein. We had Doge. We have the border shutdown, mass deportations taking effect. Trump immediately got to work on the transgender issues. Thank Christ. No more hormone treatment therapy for children under 18, right? That's one of the things that Trump campaigned on. It's a disgrace that you have these idiotic parents out there so plagued by liberal, disgusting ideology that they want to turn their 13-year-old boy into a woman, and that there was ever even an idea that you could give them puberty blockers. I mean, that is demonic. As a parent, I genuinely believe as a parent that if you're guilty of that, you should have your children stripped away from you and you should be castrated from having any future children. Like, that is disgusting. And this administration cracked down on that immediately. Those are the examples of where they take moral superiority and they achieve the moral high ground. You plant the MAGA flag on top of the hill and you say, we're the ones that are now the center of morality. We're the ones with the ethics in this country. Even to some extent, Roe v. Wade, that happened in 2022, but it happened in large part as a result of Trump appointing the right kind of Supreme Court justices to get the job done. And so Trump actually gets partial credit, fairly so in my opinion, for Roe v. Wade being overturned. No more women killing their babies out of convenience, another disgusting act committed in this country. Women have killed more of their children than any American soldier man could ever claim collectively. It's honestly abhorrent. And again, we used to lobotomize women who got abortions, right? And it's just like, we're in such a sick place with this country now. Everything's gone downhill. Conservatives have failed to conserve anything. But here was Trump. It seemed like we were making up lost ground finally. And like I said, it seemed like we had moral superiority. Because I've said this on prior episodes, the problem with a lot of old school Republicans is they always carry out the agenda, and they always say stuff and do stuff in a way that makes you realize that they view the Democrats as the morally upright party. They almost appeal in everything they do to Democrat moral superiority. And that's just such an error to make. These Democrats are disgusting. This is the party that wanted vaccine papers. They wanted at one point you had to prove. They wanted you to be able to prove you got both your shots during COVID in order to enter a store to buy stuff, right? Orwellian society. This was all under Democrat rule. These are the people that wanted us 6 feet apart. They wanted you wearing a mask. They didn't care that it ruined child psychology during school for all of this. They're pro-abortion. They want women aborting children for any reason, right? They're anti-marriage, so they're pro no-fault divorce laws. Like, these people, the Democrats want to destroy our traditions and our way of life. They want to destroy everything about America. They're anti-religion, they're anti-white, they're anti-man, they're anti-marriage, they're anti-children, right? They're anti-anything normal, anything sane. And here was Trump claiming a lot of that back, but it only lasted for a few months. And that's the sad reality of it. And now this is going to come back to bite them majorly in the midterms. And that's the way that's going to happen is going to be centered around this Epstein Files disaster. It's going to be weaponized against this administration, and rightfully so. And we're going to see them lose the midterms, and by that means, of course, going to lose control of Congress. And when they do that, subcommittees will be formed, investigations will be forced, they'll be forced to testify, there will be impeachments made, and it's going to be a disaster. Trump is already easing off the throttle now before Republicans have lost control. He's already under-delivering. He's already pulling back from mass deportations. He's already rescinding on campaign promises. It's not going to get better when they lose Congress later this year. It's going to come to a grinding halt. And people in the chat that aren't understanding this, they're saying, wait, give it more time. I don't think you understand something. We're out of time. We have about 6 months. We have less than a year, I'll put it to you that way, because the midterms will be held and then it won't take effect till January. So we have 11 months. Let's just say that. We're pretty much out of time. We don't even have 1 year left. That's really the context in which you have to view this. Everything you want Trump to accomplish needs to be done in the next 11 months, because after that, for God's sake, the Democrats are already shutting down government without complete control. In fact, they have almost no control. But the spineless, cucked Republicans won't nuke the filibuster to continue onward. Instead, they take a recess again and go on vacation. When they come back, oh no, we're not nuking the filibuster. John Thune, he thinks that's absurd. Now he's entertaining the idea of a talking filibuster again. Nevertheless, they won't get rid of it. And so Democrats are just hijacking everything when they really shouldn't have the ability to do so. And so that's where we're at now. We're at a point now where they've already usurped the agenda of the Trump administration. They've already forced Trump to surrender in Minnesota. They've already shut down government 3 times now, technically. 2 partials and 1 full one last year. That went on for the longest on record. And that's without control. When they have control, it's game over. That'll be it. And again, they've lost the moral superiority now with the Epstein Files. That's the main point here. And it doesn't get better when you look at what's going on now with the, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm going to get to her in a second. When I tell you what she said and go over the latest Marjorie Taylor Greene story, you'll understand even more how they've lost moral superiority. And then we're going to discuss a little bit of Israel and Iran. I don't claim to be a Middle East specialist, but that's also going to be a disaster, I think, for midterms, and we'll cover that in a second. All right. But have you seen the Dow, though? And says, yeah, Pam Bondi really wants me to look at the Dow. And the funny thing is, when I looked at it the next day, it was back down. So fuck her. The Dow, that thing where only boomers are really invested into it. The stock market, the stock market's doing so great. Oh, don't you have a 401k? No, actually, no. Most 50% of us don't even have a 401k. So fuck you and your 401k. It's game over for you, dude, says T Music Lover. Oh yeah, how's that? It's not going to come back to bite us. Y'all going to lose in the end, no matter what, because we love people. You hate people. Who said I hate people? What are you talking about even? You sound like you need to be deported. You sound like the voice of desperation, says Hans Tyndale. Thank you, I guess. What does that have to do with anything? Like, the funny thing is, you guys can't even argue. You guys can't even argue with me. There's no arguments being made here. These are all just ad hominems, right? Like, it's surely the sign of the fact that I say most of my chat a lot of times is filled with swine. You guys are just swine, or you're cattle, right? You're just part of a herd. You're just moved wherever the administration wants you to be moved. Like, that's it. You guys have no say in anything. You live your meaningless lives day to day, waking up, going to work, smoking a blunt, watching TV, and going to sleep, stuffing your fat ass face with food. And that's about it, right? Shitting your brains out the morning of before work. Like, that's your life. It's so meaningless. It's so fruitless. And the fact of the matter is, it's your low IQ, it's your low intelligence, it's your comprehension ability. And it's all pointed out here in these chats, right? Explain what normal is to me, and I'll change my decision on what I just wrote, says P.S. Sway Beats. You know what's normal? Well, I'll tell you, I'll actually use again COVID. If COVID is normal to you, then you just love dystopian society, right? Like the liberals, they thrived during COVID. They were calling it the new normal. Do you remember that? This is the new normal, guys. Liberals were jerking off in their pants daily on the fact that they had to wear 2 masks and get 3 vaccinations and stand 6 feet apart, not talking to anybody, right? Wearing 2 masks in your car. If that was you, which it sounds like it sounds like that was you, well then, yeah, we have a radical difference on what normal is. Normal to me is I go about my day. I don't have to cover my face with face diapers. I don't take vaccinations that are pretty much untested, right? 3 years of studies, not good enough. I don't do any of that jazz. I don't socially distance, none of it. I walked around during COVID, sneezing in public without a care. I coughed wherever I pleased. I only wore a mask for a week. And then I looked around and I realized, what the fuck is this bullshit? So I took all the masks off. I refused to wear a mask. And I never took any of that shit. I'm a pure blood. Why? Because that's normal. Believe it or not. I know that's going to sound crazy to the liberal mind, right? But you probably don't even know what gender you are today. So don't even try to tell me what normal is, okay? Liberals are the antithesis of normal. And yes, there is a normal and there is an objective normal, and you're not a part of it. Yes, get your boosters so less people end up with COVID. I don't care. If a 93-year-old grandma, if she gets sneezed on, she's going to die probably. That's how life works, believe it or not. It's just sad. It is what it is, though. Maybe 93-year-olds should just be forced into sheer isolation then in a sterile room with no human contact so we can help keep them alive for a few extra years. Like, the logic is just so stupid, okay? Everyone's going to die at some point. If you're immunocompromised, you're going to die sooner than most probably. If you're old, you're going to die soon. That's how life works, believe it or not. Do you know what the problem is? It's the fear of death. And that's because most people are godless, soulless motherfuckers. And so they don't have any faith in an afterlife, and so they live terrified of death. I'm not afraid. I was asked that outright by a girl at my gym at one point. I was in there without a mask. The manager was yelling at me about it. I said, "Fuck you." I didn't care. I sat down. I finished my workout. She said, "But aren't you afraid?" And I said, "Of what?" She's like, "I don't know, of dying." And I was like, I was like, I was even younger then than I am now. So I laughed because it's like, first of all, I'm not afraid. No, I'm not. And second of all, even if When it's my time to go, it's my time to go. God will take me when he's finished with me, and nothing will stop that anyway. And that's the problem. That's what we saw with COVID, really. And that's why so many mindless sheep took the jab, and now they have to defend it even harder, even though science is literally starting to come out to point to the fact that it is in fact somewhat dangerous, at least to have taken it, especially from people. So, and that's the funny thing. Well, it's worth it for the herd immunity. Shut the fuck up. So stupid. So dumb. So dumb. All right. I want to get into Marjorie Taylor Greene's phone call here because this also points to something, a big error with the Trump administration. And again, losing the moral high ground. And this phone call that she says she had, this is all her claiming this, of course. But this is a lot when it comes to Epstein. Why is Trump doing this? Why is he slow rolling the release of the Epstein Files? Why is he engaged in an active cover-up with them? What's going on with this administration? Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene honestly said that she had a call from Trump back when her, Thomas Massie, and Ro Khanna were basically getting the Epstein Files Transparency Act finished up. The funny thing is, of course, it's named the Transparency Act. This administration claims to be the most transparent one, and now they haven't been living up to that in months. But she says she got a phone call from Trump, who was screaming at her on the phone about this, and we know Trump went on to call her a traitor and basically bullied her out of politics. And that makes me sick as well, on both accords. Trump easily turns on those who actually had his back, like MTG did. But it also makes me sick because, again, it points to how women shouldn't be in our politics. They don't have the stomach for it. And she was easily bullied out of her position the second that things got hot, when she should have really stood her ground. But, she just wants to be back with her family now. So it points to a lot of problems. But the fact remains, she was getting screamed at on the phone by Trump, according to her, over the Epstein Files Transparency Act, where she said he was outraged. And she said, I was trying to calm him down. I was trying to remind him, Mr. Trump, you're not criminally implicated in these files. You're going to be okay. We're going to release them. This is what you campaigned on anyway, to some degree. He didn't come up with it, but during his campaign, he promised it when he was asked about it. And so she was reminding him of that, trying to comfort him. And she said, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, she said, Trump said, I know, but Marjorie, when the files are released, it's going to hurt all of my friends. And I find that so fascinating. And it does vindicate and validate a lot of what I've been saying on this channel. First and foremost, making the prediction like I did last year around May. I think I made the video where I said Trump will not be criminally implicated in these files. Even then, before the release, we already knew pretty much everything we needed to know about Trump. And now I've looked through the files, and all the times that he's mentioned under the guise of Epstein-related TDS, or mentioned under the guise of, conversation. Nothing incriminates him. In fact, quite the opposite. He's oftentimes mentioned in the form of, well, he never took a massage at Palm Beach. He's never been on the island. He borrowed my jet, but he flew from, Mar-a-Lago to New York with his family. It's like, that's all the stuff, to some degree, like borrowing the jet, for instance, I referenced back in May. We didn't know about him refusing massages in Palm Beach or whatnot, but I made the assumption last year, based off of an educated guess, that he never went to the islands. And I said this from the start. Billionaires network. They loan each other their private jets. That is what they do. And Epstein was a networker. This is what Epstein did. He made it a point to get to know as many wealthy, powerful people as possible, because his island wasn't what they want you to think that it is, at least in my opinion. A lot of these stories are far-fetched on his island about the sacrifice and cannibalism and lizard people and all of this radical, crazy shit, most of which I don't believe. His island was an operation. It was a Mossad operation. It was very likely a CIA operation. And I have to say it was very likely Mossad because, of course, Israel denies this. And, of course, our government here denies him being involved with CIA. Britain will no doubt deny him being involved with MI6, but I think very likely he was involved with all three. And that's what his island was. It was an operation. And used barely legal. So in a lot of cases, these girls were 17 or 18, but we know for a fact there were underage ones as well on the island. So that's the premise here. Maybe as young as 14, but then there were 17, 18, and 19, and even 20 and 21-year-old women on these islands. But the point was to compromise these people for future blackmail and to be able to ultimately become the puppet master and control them. And so that's what Epstein wanted to do. This is the whole point of his island. So of course he knew Trump. Trump was wealthy, famous, and powerful. Epstein knew a lot of people, which is why so many people are mentioned in these files. Your name being in the files doesn't implicate you of any criminal guilt right off the bat. Investigations need to be made. And that's why I predicted this and I was right. And now this phone call between him and Marjorie Taylor Greene also validates and vindicates what I've been saying on this channel. And the fact of the matter is, Trump is trying to cover up the files on behalf of the wealthy elites. I've been saying this from the start. It's not about protecting himself. He doesn't need to. The only thing that is incriminating on Trump in those files comes from third-party unreliable accounts and anonymous tips. And some of the anonymous tips are conveniently turned in at around 2016 when Trump has won the election or is finishing up, on the campaign trail. So the timing is suspicious. Anonymous tips don't count for shit. Third-party accounts that are unreliable don't count for shit. All of the actual Epstein victims, the female victims, have on record stated that Trump did nothing to them. Trump is not guilty. All the ones you could get a statement from, the credible, verifiable Epstein victims, they've said it live on TV, on liberal media news networks. But he is covering for the elites. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she swears she had that phone call where he said that to her. And in my opinion, that still makes Trump and this administration guilty. The intent doesn't matter. You're covering it up and you shouldn't be. We should be modeling the way that, honestly, I hate to say this too, because I hate giving Britain or the European Union any credit at all ever. I think they're bullshit countries, and I think that they're fake, phony Western countries that don't even believe in Western ideals. But Britain has been handling this so much more magnificently. Peter Mandelson has been wrapped up in these Epstein files over there, and he's been forced out of lordship. He's been denounced by everybody. He's very likely in big trouble. And Keir Starmer, their prime minister, even is in trouble for knowingly appointing Peter Mandelson to his position while knowing that he was involved with the Epstein Island and in the files. That's how you handle it. But instead, we have Howard Lutnick, who now was forced to admit that he had lunch on the island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein had already been convicted of pedophilia in Florida by the state of Florida, or criminal child endangerment, or whatever it was, whatever the charge was. Howard Lutnick, our Secretary of Commerce, he had lunch on the island in 2012 with his family, and he doesn't remember why, but according to him, he remembers he was only there for an hour. That's what he says. And so it's like, will he step down and resign? No, he laughs about it every time it's mentioned. He laughs about the files. The way we're handling it here is sickening. With his wife and kids, says A Carp 87. Yep, with his wife and kids. We got the Dow is 50,000. Yep. Someone also said Trump told them to release it and threatened to fire them. Says Blast Phantom Games. Trying to see what's going on here. Check phone call. Why would you check my hard drive? I'm literally the one saying that we need to punish these people. Are you fucking disgusting and stupid? You're so fucking stupid. You're actually retarded. He's talking about Epstein. Check his hard drive. Check his computer. I mean, only a sicko would talk about wanting justice for the co-conspirators and perpetrators on Epstein. I mean, honestly, you should stop talking about this topic altogether. What the fuck are you on, you stupid cuck? I caught TDS in 2016. It lingers. TDS is strong. I don't have TDS. I voted for Trump, and I want him to do well. I am speaking the truth, which is why nobody still, to this day, has any credible argument in my chat. None of you are saying anything to counter what I'm saying. It's all ad hominem attacks. That's all you guys are good for. Low IQ. This guy knows about billionaire networks ranting in his car house. Okay? You know how I know that? I read. Do you know how to do that still? Or do you only listen to headline news? Do you consume mainstream media and that's it? I read. You can go on the official government websites and read the files. They're all there. I've done it. I have streamed episodes where I'm pulling them up and reading them to you guys and explaining what's in them. It's not hard. It's really not hard. That's just like another boomer take where it's like, oh yeah, well, what do you have your degree in? Do you have your degree in billionaire networks? If not, then shut up. Fuck you. Like, we're in the age of information. This is all at our fingertips. It's all in front of us. That's the most insulting thing. It's all in front of us. They've been doing this and getting away with this for decades, and now this information is in our face. And instead, you have retards like Ibidi, whatever your name is, whom you might just be. I'm sure you're a rage baiter, and so props to you. But if you genuinely believe that, and some people do, which is why I'm really going off, well, then that's the problem. Really, is you have retards out there that just that's like it. They're like, oh yeah, well, you don't really know anything. It's like, okay, well, thanks for your opinion. The information's right in front of us. It's accessible to the public. Like I have read so many of these files, it's mind-blowing. And you know what? It's actually not hard to read a lot of these files. You know why? Because every third page is just a giant black rectangle. Thanks, Pam Bondi. It's like, 1,000 pages, this will take forever to read. No, actually only about 145 of them have words on them. He let Maxwell upgrade the prison stay. Yep, I know. Yep. Anybody assisting PDFs is a poop stain. Yeah, it's more than pedophile. It's more than pedophilia, though. That's the whole point of what Epstein. I'm getting at here with what Epstein was. He was an operation. Arrest the real rich. Do you think Trump is innocent? Not anymore. But not. He's not guilty of the activities on the island. He was never there. We have to wait for the other half of the files to release, obviously, to really, with 100% certainty, say that, though. But I've long made the prediction, like I said, that he's not guilty of the activities. Remember something. We're now getting that information. People are now pointing out how Michael Jackson's Never Neverland Ranch was meant to protect children from this. And that's not the most credible thing to say, so I don't stand by that. But people are pointing that out now. And you have to remember something. Trump is loyal to his friends, and it seems like he's loyal to a fault, because Trump was one of the few people that stood by Michael Jackson the entire time, and he refused to ever denounce Michael Jackson. And now, in light of the Epstein Files coming out, people are now really starting to question Michael Jackson and his intent, and they're starting to point to that, and they're starting to say, it seems like Jackson was trying to create the opposite situation, where children are actually safe and can have fun and be protected from the evils of this world. Wouldn't surprise me if that's true. And Trump was always the one to defend Michael's name, always. And now Trump is protecting his friends at the expense of credibility. And I'll say this. This is what I wanted to say about that as well, and why Trump is a fool, in all honesty, for doing this. Because these people that he calls his friends, where were they when he was being viciously prosecuted by the Biden administration, where they were making up charges to go after him? They were falsifying documents, like during the Obama era especially, but even during the Biden regime. We saw lawfare being weaponized against Trump relentlessly. Where were Trump's friends then? Because most of them weren't around. And the even sadder reality is the ones that were around, the ones that suffered for Trump, like General Mike Flynn, are nowhere to be found in his administration, in his cabinet, or anything. They've all been isolated. He's been isolated from them. Probably by people like Susie Wiles. Probably by people deep within his administration, isolating him from people who actually had his back. And here's Trump instead, now praising the Clintons and openly saying he thinks it's a shame that the files have been released and that it's been hurting the Clinton name. Who is this guy? Who is Donald Trump at this point? That's really what I want to ask, Because it's like who Trump considers his friends are the same people that would turn on him in an instant. And that makes Trump a fool in my eyes. It really does. So, and once again, it's like, now you have to ask this too. It's like, we have this whole Israel situation going on. A lot of the Israeli government could be implicated in these files. We have Ehud Barak, for instance, who was photographed visiting Epstein's New York home several times. He's in photographs just outside Epstein's home more than once. We know for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein was granted power of attorney over Les Wexner's companies. He was at one point the head of the Wexner Foundation, which made a $2.23 million or billion, who knows, who cares anymore, it's a lot of money, was donated to Ehud Barak for research purposes. A lot of that research was never even fully finished, and the funds just dried up and went somewhere, who knows where, right? On top of that, Jeffrey Epstein used the word goyim and goy quite a bit in his emails, and he discussed a lot of future plans with Jewish people. And this is not one of those This is not one of those channels out here that's here to say that that every Jew is evil. I don't, like I said, I'm not a Middle East expert, so I'm not here to weigh in excessively so on Israel, the state of Israel, etc. But what's undeniable after I've combed through so many of the Epstein files is, once again, what we call our greatest ally is kind of shady. Like they're shadily involved in these Epstein files releases, and a lot of big names centered around the Israeli government is involved, like especially Ehud Barak, former prime minister. Ehud Barak held several positions in the Israeli government, in fact. And so it's just, there's a lot going on. Leon Black is another one. So, and Les Wexner, he owned Victoria's Secret Limited, etc. And so it's like, it's a network. It's a network of powerful people, not just Israel, but certainly Israel as well. And that's really what I think Trump, it's a big part of this all, and why Trump is trying to actively engage in a cover up, and who Trump is protecting, and at such a severe cost. Because the answer to this is so simple. The solution to these problems right now is simple. Release the files. Unredacted, only victims' names redacted. That's really all it took. And you go back in time to this time last year, Trump was being shaped up and getting ready to be declared a hero when he said he was going to push forward with releasing the Epstein files. The level of excitement and the narrative, it was just an undeniable narrative at that point. Even liberal media had to give him his dues for this. They couldn't say much yet. And then, boom, in May, it's all of a sudden, well, those Epstein files are a hoax. I can't believe you still believe those. If you want Epstein files released, you're not MAGA, and I don't want your vote anymore. Like, that's how fast it turned, and you have to ask yourself why. And the answer why, I think, has been already revealed in the half of the files we've already gotten, let alone who knows what's in the other half yet. But I think inevitably we're going to find out. And that's the thing. But in doing so, like I said, the whole purpose, the messaging of this stream is the Republicans have lost their moral high ground superiority that they were finally claiming this time last year. And it's all centered around the disastrous handling of the Epstein files. Now, of course, another campaign promise is very likely going to be left unfulfilled or broken. The Israel-Iran tensions are heating up too, speaking of Israel. So that's another problem, in my opinion. I'm not a Middle East specialist, but it's like there's a great chance that at least something violent happens in the Middle East with Iran, and Trump ran on no new wars. So, what are we going to do now? Are we going to change the definition of what inflation is, like the Biden regime did, so that they could claim the inflation wasn't that bad? Are we going to change the definition of what a war is now? It blows my mind in a lot of ways, because a lot of the solutions to this stuff is so simple, and it just seems like a deliberate self-sabotage at this point. Michael Wolff is not a credible source. Cannibalism, what's happening? No fucking arrests yet. I agree with the latter part. I don't know about the cannibalism part. I think a lot of the claims are really out there. Like, I've read about the jerky. They had all these cutesy names for stuff, clearly. Like the women that Jean-Luc, I can't remember his last name. Jean-Luc was basically the international Ghislaine Maxwell in France, and he used his modeling agency as a front to be able to, shuttle in these young girls at Epstein's request. And Epstein and him referred to these young girls as Pop-Tarts. So, but it's not because they were killing them and turning them into pastries. It was just they were called Pop-Tarts, right? So, and then there was, of course, Pizzagate, for instance. And then there's the jerky, and they're talking about eating the jerky. But we don't know fully what that means. And I'm not inclined to dive into there's crazy theories about the island now, where they're discussing vampires and reptile people and, demons, and like spirits and ghosts and aliens and, underwater monsters and all this jazz. It's just like, all right, that part I'm going to stay out of. I'm going to focus on what I can concretely point to. And though what I'm saying is still a half conspiracy theory, it's becoming more credible with each passing week. And that is, of course, like I said a few moments ago, the Epstein Island was an intelligence operation, very likely collectively done so via Mossad, via CIA, MI6, etc. 2009 Lifeguard says, and what they did then is child's play compared to what they will do. well, I can't remember what context you're discussing, but if you're discussing like Democrats and the Biden regime, yes. And that's another problem with Trump. He's stirring up the hornet's nest and taunting these liberals, and he's really just ineffectively going after them. There's the saying out there. I can't remember. I think it's from a sorry, excuse me. I think it's from a TV show, maybe Game of Thrones, or maybe it's a historical statement. If you come for the king, you better not miss. And the Democrats really made that mistake with Trump. They came for him and they missed. And now they're paying for it, but they're really not paying enough for it. And now it's almost being reversed. It's like Trump's coming for them and he's missing, So he's just enraging all of these people, and they're going to want revenge and retribution. And they're going to wield the power effectively to get it, unlike what we're seeing out of this DOJ currently, which is toothless, cucked, and unable. 2009 lifeguard, yes, yep. Yeah, self-sabotage started 5 years ago, fool. TDS much? Listen, again, I'm not even going to enter. Like, you're just a swine. You're literally just cattle. Lance Heacock, I can't interact with you. You are cattle. Your mind is too low. You're too low level of a thinker. I can't interact with you. You should go find another stream. There's plenty of MAGA cheerleader channels out there awaiting you. And you guys can celebrate the stock market that you're not even invested in being up. That's more your speed, all right? Farewell. So let me get this right. The left, the party of the maps, have the moral high ground. No, they don't. They do not have the moral high ground, but they always claim to have it, and the Republicans always back that messaging by their actions. Look, a communist, says Mr. I am literally the opposite of a communist. I agree. Mike Johnson said we can't release all the files. I said that earlier, Sweet Tooth. And yes, that is true. That is what Mike Johnson is on record saying. And look what's happening in Britain. Their government is actually toppling to some degree over the release of these files. So he wasn't even wrong. But the real problem is, that's what we need to happen. We need this system to be torched, and we need to start anew. We need to get big money out of our government, because that's why these people are all in offices and they don't represent their people or even care about us. It's supposed to be we the people. They don't represent us. They represent big pharma. They represent APAC. They represent any super PAC that donates enough to them. They represent foreign lobbyists and meddlers and special interest groups and big pharma and big tech and little tech. These are the people that have all their money wrapped into politics, and that's why we see them making these dumbfounded decisions where it's like, this is so unpopular. I don't understand why this politician would be doing this. Nobody wants this. It's like, no, you're not understanding. It's crony capitalism now. Capitalism is wonderful. Crony capitalism is too far, and that's where we're at. And all of that money is now affecting our politics. It's being used against us. I think about that all the time. I know it's more of a state-level issue, but every time I hit a pothole that looks like a sauropod dinosaur was walking on the road, and I know for a fact I'm fucking up the tie rods in my car or the bushings on my car when I hit it, I think, you know what? My money's supposed to be going to ensure that this doesn't happen. God only fucking knows where it's actually going, though, right? God only knows. And that's a state-level issue, but I'm pretty sure every American can relate to that, because every state I go to has massive potholes. It literally looks like a sauropod dinosaur has been walking down the road on pretty much every road. And I'll tell you this, I've been driving for years now. It wasn't even always this bad 10 years ago. It's gotten worse. And again, it's state level, so I'm not trying to imply that all of our state level taxes are going to big pharma and APAC, or well, sorry, not APAC, but it's going to fund corruption, big pharma, bloated, all that jazz. I'm not trying to imply that directly, but to some degree, it's like, well, where's it going? Because it's certainly not going to help me. How about them thieving in Minnesota? Yeah, the fraud. Google worker productivity to compensation graph, a 50-year decline. Yeah. We do more and we get paid less. Yeah, real wage growth has not kept up. Before I forget, the acoustics in the car are perfect. It would be hard to rebuild a room in your house that with that. When I make my videos, I make them in my studio, in my house. And I have it's an Elgato wave mic. It's a pretty good USB mic. So like the audio quality on my videos is definitely still much better than what you get out of my acoustic cars. But I appreciate that too. It's good to know that that's how the sound quality is decent in my car 2009 Lifeguard. I just like going live from my phone here because I'm out working and I'm like, you know, I like to go live around the same time, but it's like in the middle of a work night for me. And so I'm not the kind of person, I don't like to go home in the middle of a work night. Like I make my own schedule, so like I'm my own boss, so I can basically do it. But for me, it's like once I go home, I'm not going back. I'm not leaving again. So like that's really the thing for why I go live here. Because I as soon as I go off live, I'm right back to work. So send this guy to a cartel. Let's see how like these are you guys are. It's just goy. You're just like you're literally cattle goy. You're just like send this guy to a cartel. Let's see how fast he calls Trump for help. What point are you trying to make? You're right about the money, but the right is definitely not helping. Yeah, that's the whole point, Robert Rosenberg. That's my whole point existing as a channel at this point. You know, you go back far enough on this channel, and I'm glazing Trump. I'm loving everything he's doing. But you'll notice the tone shift right around August, September, and even before then, because truthfully, I pretty much from the start said Pam Bondi was going to suck. And I even remember getting into a fight with my mom about it because she was like, "You have such a negative view on women," and I'm like, "It really is supposed to be a man's job, the attorney general. We don't need a woman." This administration claims to be such a pro-feminine administration, and they're like, "Oh, we have all these women appointed." It's like, look where it's gotten us. Fucking hell. And so I've been hating on Pam Bondi from the start. So really the negativity started pretty early on. But for the most part, I was pretty optimistic about Trump for a while. And he really was doing great things the first few months. But man, did that taper off quick. And by the end of last year, I was like, man, this is just nothing of what I want anymore. Never had an issue with the audio, says Shadow. That's good to hear. Yeah, that's good to hear. You're doing just fine, says 2000. Appreciate it. Have they audited the gold in... Yeah, I was looking forward to that. Auditing the gold in Fort Knox. That would have been nice too, wouldn't it have been? It was a big topic and it faded. What's your opinion? Yeah, you got to ask why, right? John Preston, you got to ask why that never happened. Trump at one point with Elon said that they were going to live stream it. Elon said, I'll bring cameras. We'll live stream it. We'll go right in and the American people will know right away. That would have been amazing. That was again around the time when his youth support, Trump's youth support with young men was soaring. It's so uncommon for a conservative to be that popular with the youth. And he was like, his youth approval was so high when Doge was around. Auditing Fort Knox would have been wonderful. Why didn't they follow through on that? That's what you got to ask. Maybe because the gold's not there anymore. That's the conspiracy theory, of course. But it's like that could have been put to rest if they would have just did what they said they were going to do. There is no gold, says Gorgon. Yeah, I mean it certainly looks that way. What else are we supposed to believe now? If there was gold, wouldn't they have just But then the thing is, of course, Elon was ousted from Doge and Doge was disbarred, and that, like I said earlier on this episode, that was part of a cover up too, in my opinion. Doge was finding the waste, fraud, and corruption that was going to hurt the Republican Party too. Just like how the Epstein file doesn't just hurt Democrats, even though Democrats are insidiously involved in the files and their names are all over it. Well, guess what? Some Republicans are involved too, it turns out. And some of them are fundamental to the Trump administration. Look up Leon Black. He's one of the major co-conspirators, in my opinion, on the Epstein files. He gave Epstein a lot of the wealth basically because he found Epstein charming and mysterious. He decided to give him donations of, just a couple $100 million. Well, Leon Black has, I believe it's Leon Black who has a son that's involved in this Trump administration. So, that's really the thing, is it's all network, and Epstein was a networker. Now that network, Epstein's gone, and the island is defunct, but that network still exists, and that network is found itself in positions of power that's fundamental to the way the world currently operates, and that's the biggest problem with the Epstein files. That's the biggest problem. They view it, whether you like it or not, even as anti-establishment as Trump speaks, Trump is by default part of the establishment because he's the president. And that's the thing. They have to protect that, or at least they think they do. Meanwhile, it's the serfs, it's the imbeciles, the goy, the cattle, the pigs, the swine. We're the ones down here that are like, no, burn it all to the ground. But you have to realize you are asking the government to destroy itself based off of morality and what's right, what's ethical. They should. We should start from scratch essentially at this point, based off of the Epstein Files. But when you're asking the government to do that, the answer is going to be a resounding no. And it doesn't really matter who's voted in, unless you get a really good candidate that's hell bent on doing that. And when that happens, you tend to find that candidate's jet falls out of the sky into the ocean somewhere, never to be found again. Because JFK came pretty close to some of those ideals. He wanted to return us to the gold standard. He wanted to dismantle the CIA, shred it to 1,000 pieces, and scatter it to the winds. There was a lot that JFK was running on back then that was anti-establishment. And they said, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool if you drove around town in a convertible, and for a little while? Wouldn't that be cool, Mr. JFK, Mr. President? And look what happened there. So that's the reality. That's what we're dealing with. Also, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, was networking with Epstein. Oh, see, I haven't gotten to that part yet, but I'll look into that now. I wish politicians would look out for the minors. And the minors spelled miners, not minors on an island. Elon wanted to party, but apparently, that's actually ironically hilarious. It's creepy, but it's funny too. It's like pretty much everybody could be. Epstein would pretty much jump at the chance to compromise everybody, and then you have Elon who's like, "Hey man, can I come to a party?" And it's like, no. Like how much of a loser do you have to? How much of a loser do you have to be in that upper echelon of society and not be welcomed on the island and be told, no, you're not. I'm ghosting you. Like, not a great feeling actually to see that though, because it's like, now you have to question Elon a hell of a lot too. How much did Elon know while he was asking that? That's the real important question to ask. Pam Bondi was installed after Matt Gaetz. Yes, correct. And Matt Gaetz was viciously, I don't want to say slandered, but the Democrats preyed on the Republicans' desire to eat their own the second they get a chance to, by levying allegations. That's really what happened with Matt Gaetz. Oh man, I hate YouTube censorship. Me too. I know it hides your guys' comments. I try to show them when I can, but when I'm monologuing, I'm not going to stop doing that just to hide stuff or not show it. Read your number one comments, says Charles Bester. Oh, do you feel, are you going to complain to both your moms later that the mean streamers ignoring you? Is that going to bother you? I bet both your moms will take turn patting you on the head, though, to tell you how good of a job you did today, little boy, Charles Bester. They're probably very proud of you. I bet if you knew your father and were able to tell him, he'd be proud of you, too. Keystone Liberty, hey, welcome, man. I don't know if you've been here a while yet or if you're just coming, but appreciate you stopping in. He says, Jeffrey Epstein was a regular at the Playboy Mansion. Yeah, well, that shouldn't be surprising. I haven't gotten to that part of the files yet either, though. The same time with Bill Cosby and Bill Gates. Shadow says, welcome back. Oh, Charles Cucker. Yeah, everyone welcome Charles Cucker back into the chat. I'm a conservative. I'm not sure what you are. I've already told you what I am. You just don't like that I'm a socially, fiscally conservative younger guy that criticizes Trump. Because old people always are the ones that are convinced. Like Charles is a boomer, without a doubt in my mind. And they're always the ones that are like, you got to toe the party line. It's about voting in the lesser of two evils. You don't want Kamala Harris to be the president, right? You know it's going to be AOC and Gavin Newsom running in 2028, right? Like, we can't allow them to win. So you'll vote for Republican no matter what, right? No, I won't actually. I don't owe anybody my vote. They owe it to me to win my vote. That's how it's supposed to go. And what the conservatives are the most guilty of nowadays, they're guilty of taking their base for granted at the expense of trying to appeal to moderates, independents, and even left-leaning people and minorities. That is a fundamental error. The liberals are always trying to assure that their fundamental base is satisfied. With Republicans, they get it all wrong. They don't give a shit about us. They know for a fact people like Charles Kucker down there is going to vote conservative no matter what, right? Like Charles Kucker, he probably voted for Mitt Romney back then, right? Mitt Romney, one of the first, what I can't, how long ago was, I mean, that was what, 2012? I was so young back then, and I remember I was like, man, I can't wait to see who the candidates are going to be so I can vote. And when I saw it was Mitt Romney, you know what I did? I didn't vote for Mitt Romney. He was an idiot. I voted for Ron Paul, which was probably the last year I could justify voting for an independent, of course. Nowadays, you need to vote in a hardcore conservative. But if it's not going to be a hardcore conservative, I'm not going to vote for him. And the GOP is going to learn that the hard way. Because I'll tell you this right now, and I've said this several times now over the past couple of days. If you think I'm a radical and I'm the only one out here that's in the under 40 bracket that's saying stuff like this, you are sadly mistaken. Young men want to be conservative, especially socially so, but they're not going to vote conservative just for some cucklord who's going to turn out like Trump again and only ever promise anything without delivering. We demand better from our party. We will not vote for the lesser of two evils. We will not vote for somebody who winds up being just a moderate independent at best with a few conservative values. We demand extreme change. And if we're not going to get a candidate who's going to deliver on that, we're not going to vote. And I'll let everything just dissolve. I'll let all of this just dissolve into hell. I'll let the system collapse on itself. I'll let this country suffer. Because that's when you actually change. True change doesn't happen until you've decided you can no longer tolerate your current circumstances. And that's where we have to get to as a conservative party. We have to decide we will no longer tolerate the lesser of two evils, and we have to decide that we will no longer tolerate superficial, populist candidates who never deliver. We have to demand better. And if we're not going to get better, then we have to allow this Republican Party to fail entirely. And that means, by the way, watching these Republican leaders suffer, which is actually kind of what I want. I want them to suffer at this point because they failed so miserably. One of the laziest Congresses in modern history is this current Congress, all Republican control. So I want to see someone like Speaker Mike Johnson. I want to see him ruthlessly prosecuted unfairly so. I want him to have his life ruined for failing me. I want John Thune to be ousted as Senate leader in 2028. They won't lose the Senate but they're going to lose in 2028. And I want to watch John Thune go to prison, and I want it to be unfair. I want Trump to be impeached regardless. Trump thinks he's safe. Trump thinks that he's going to pardon himself at the end of this term. And that's, I think, part of the reason why we're not getting our promises delivered. I think there's a very human element here at play, a flawed human element with Trump. And I think he thinks he's going to pardon himself on his last day with some of his cabinet members, and that's going to keep them from being prosecuted. I think he is sorely mistaken. The Democrats have proven to be the ruthless, superior party when it comes to wielding power. I think they'll ignore that. I think we're the ones right now, the Republicans, that want to play on our principles. Well, Biden did pardon all of the AutoPen co-conspirators. He pardoned Dr. Anthony Fauci and preemptively pardoned a bunch of people. So that means we can't go after them. Those are the sweet, innocent, cucked Republicans saying that. Democrats don't make those mistakes. Democrats don't play by the rules that the Republicans insist they play by. And that's why Democrats win. And I'm jealous of the Democrats. I'm jealous of the way they play the game. So if you think for 1 second Trump will be safe after this term is done, no. He'll be impeached after they lose the midterms this year. He might be ousted from office even. We might actually witness that. There's not a 0% chance of that happening. I just hope everyone knows that. Because the fact of the matter is, there are Republicans now that are borderline turncoats in Congress and in Senate now. And so there's a reality that could be at stake here next year where Trump is actually ousted as the president of the United States. He's actually impeached. And that's just, it is what it is. So after this administration is done, do you think if Democrats gain control that they won't try to prosecute Trump, that they'll abide by any preemptive pardons that Trump grants himself? I don't think that'll be the case. And I'd be lying to you if I said, you know what, I wouldn't want to see these Republicans prosecuted. I do actually. I want them punished. I want them ritually humiliated by the Democrats for being so weak and pathetic. If there's one thing I despise the most in this world, it's weakness. It's imbeciles who are supposed to be the morally upright people, the ones who are supposed to be conserving our traditional values in society, utterly failing because they play all the games all wrong and they're weak. I despise weakness and I want it ruthlessly punished. And the Democrats will do that. I won't vote Democrat. I will stick to my principles, and I'll never vote Democrat. I don't agree with anything they stand for. But you know, it almost reminds me of growing up and watching Star Wars. Really, to just to get nerdy here for a second, there was that prophecy in Star Wars about Anakin being the chosen one and restoring balance to the Force. And the reality is, you watch those movies and you're confused. You're like, well, he killed all the Jedi. Yeah, because the Jedi deserved it. They got too politically involved. They were involved with a corrupt government. They made all the wrong decisions. They betrayed their own values, and they had to go. And then Darth Vader hurls the Emperor down the tunnel, and the Emperor is annihilated, and Anakin fully fulfills the prophecy. But the Jedi, they assumed the framing of the prophecy was, well, he's going to annihilate the Sith. Yeah, he did eventually. But the Jedi had to go too, because they all betrayed their own values. They were corrupt as well. So out they went. And that's kind of, I'm almost at that point now where I view it like that. The Republicans are worthless to us overall. There's only a few good ones out there. We need more. And that's one of the things I encourage on this channel. If you're politically, if you're inclined to be involved in politics and you know it in your soul, you need to get involved. We need more everyday Americans running for office. We need more good men running for office. We need people with morals running for positions. And you don't have to go big. The sad reality is big money. It takes big money nowadays to run for governor, to run for Congress or Senate. But you can start at such a small level and still have such a massive impact on your towns and societies. You can go for school board. You can go for town council. We need socially, fiscally, conservative, traditional, masculine, Christian men in this country to stand up and claim these positions. Don't be afraid of trying to take power. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's these local levels that affect your quality of life even more than the president does. You know, the president's decisions will affect us in the long term. But in the short term, your day-to-day life is the most affected by what's happening at the town council level or the school board level when it comes to your children being educated by this liberal ideological filth. And that can change. It literally just takes men or in some cases women. Perhaps the school board doesn't need to be full of men, but it takes good conservative Christian people with good morals to rise up and not be afraid of getting involved and taking control. We're supposed to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world, but instead we conceal all of that and we hide away in our homes. We can't tolerate that anymore. And that's gonna be it for me on this stream. I think I'm gonna wrap it up with that. I do try to get that messaging out there quite a bit. Overall, it's an important one. Darth Vader was the man, says Rodney Rosado. Yes, he kind of was, wasn't he? He was pretty fucking cool. Didn't we all root for Darth Vader? You know why you know what? I'll say this. We all rooted for Darth Vader, Rodney Rosado. We all rooted for Darth Vader because we like watching somebody who knows how to wield power. And that's why I hate Republicans. They have all this power right now and they've achieved fuck all with it. They are clueless on wielding power. They're afraid of power, Republicans. They almost seem eager to give it up back to the Democrats. And I think in some cases they actually benefit from it. I think there are at least several Republicans that benefit from Democrats being in control. They very likely sell their votes to Democrats when that happens. But that's why are the villains so cool? Do you know why the villains are so cool? The best moment in Star Wars is when Vader kills the Emperor, because sometimes it takes an evil guy to get the job done. And it doesn't have to be that way, but it's because good people have a false notion of what it's like to be sanctimonious, and they have this false impression of what it means to be a Christian or to live a principled life or what morality and ethics actually is. And it's these false notions, this modernized, feminized, bastardized Christianity that only ever preaches on love and a sky daddy that loves you no matter what and never judges you and do as you please and just give someone a hug. All the Democrats need is a hug. That's all they need, just a hug. No. We need some Darth Vaders. We need some Darth Vaders in this society to rise up who aren't afraid to wield power. And there's no great examples of that. I'm telling you, if you haven't looked into James Fishback yet in Florida, especially if you live in Florida, that man needs your votes. That is the example of what we need. A 31-year-old guy who's sick and tired of watching all of this bullshit happen in this country has risen up now in Florida. He started with $950. He has now raised $250,000 and is on track to raise $1 million by Easter. He started at a 2% rating, 2% popularity as governor of Florida, with Byron Donalds being at 37%. Byron Donalds, the candidate establishment GOPer down there, who loves H-1B visas and loves AI. You have now James Fishback going from 2% to 20. Is it 27.5% or 22, 23% in just a few short weeks? We need infinitely more people like that. James Fishback knows how to wield power. He's already made promises in Florida as governor that he would sign state executive orders as governor to raise Chinese and foreign student tuition to $1 million per year. If Trump wants to allow 600 million Chinese students into this country per year, James Fishback is going to protect Florida and their students by raising foreign student tuition to $1 million a year. That's how you wield power. And we need more examples like that. James Fishback wants to become governor of Florida and leverage Florida state law and the Florida state DOJ down there. He'll use the attorney general there to prosecute the Epstein co-conspirators and perpetrators. Because guess what? Palm Beach, Florida is where a lot of this sick shit took place. And so any of the names listed in the files that had anything to do with Palm Beach, Florida, Fishback wants to investigate and prosecute them, and he wants to bring back public executions as the punishment if the investigation and prosecution determines that they're guilty. That's how you wield power. We need 49 other Fishbacks to rise up for governors of these states, and we need another one to rise up and become the president. That's what we need. And go figure, Fishback's a young guy. He's decided he can no longer tolerate what he sees. Goes back to say what I said. True change only comes when you decide you can no longer tolerate something. What is going on? Yeah, well, Charles is upset. He's just upset. He's a goy. He's a cow. He's a low-level thinker. He can only come at me with it doesn't. I don't know who he is, so that's why I've largely ignored him, pretty much probably like everyone else in his life does. This is not a guy who has a lot of friends. Another fascinating chat from Charles. Yeah, I'll time him out though. We don't want him disrupting stuff. You're in timeout, Charles. You're in timeout. You need to think about what you did today, Charles. I need both your moms to spank you later. You're in big doo-doo. Fascist, spouting, idiot, loser. This is the quality of an intellect in most people these days. Keystone Liberty says the Road Warriors, Animal, and Hawk, says Keystone. I don't know why we're mentioning WWE stuff, but I love it. I'm a big WWE fan, so you keep on keeping on. These low IQ dipshits on this chat mean nothing. Yeah, they don't. Listen. They're the cattle of the world, right? But they're also my cattle. You know what I mean? I'm going to time out Charles because that's spam at that point. But for most of them, they're free to come in and insult me. You know why? Their chats boost my streaming position in the algorithm. It helps get more eyes on me. And so even if at first, especially in these beginning days, I've only been going live now for 3 weeks. The channel hasn't even existed 1 year. They're my cattle. They're useful. I'm still their shepherd at the end of the day. They're here to be enlightened, and they're hearing my words regardless. They're hearing my wisdom. they're hearing my knowledge. And if they're going to be in my chat to hate me, that's fine, because the chat signal to the YouTube algorithm that this stream is gaining attention. And it signals to YouTube to keep pushing the stream out to a couple more viewers every time I get a chat. So they're my cattle still. You know what I mean? Some cattle need to be, electrocuted a couple times and disciplined, like Charles, who had to be timed out. But for the most part, they're useful to me still. Rodney Rosado says, I am a conservative father, dad, husband to a wife, and crusaders. Please subscribe to American Advocates if you haven't already. I love that. We need more people like you, Rodney. Like the stream, too, if you haven't already. That's a message for everybody here. If you enjoyed the stream tonight, be sure to subscribe to American Advocates for more. Make sure notifications are turned on, too, that bell icon, or wherever you see it, to turn on the post notifications so you're notified every time I go live. I'm convinced AOC is bipolar, says Keystone Liberty. Yeah, she probably is. That's why I'm not a Republican. We have a uniparty. Yeah, you don't have to identify as a Republican. You just have to identify as a conservative and bide your time and look for a good candidate. A good candidate's going to run as a Republican, but, the party as a whole right now, yeah, absolutely. There's too much big money involved. That's the problem. Jesus hates you. I say that as an atheist. Well, good thing you don't believe in Jesus, so that statement cannot be true, says Luis Garcia. Good thing you don't believe in him. Would this Chinese have to pay to Rodney? If I see you, you'll meet what you looking for. What kind of sentence is that, Warby Cena? You sound like you need to be deported if you're going to speak English that terrible. Get out. Strom, get out of the mommy basement and stop taking stupid pills. Count your days. Count your days, maggot. We see you. Yeah, you need to be deported. I can tell you're a Latino. You need to get out. You're probably here illegally in this country. I know for a fact English is not your first language, Warby Cena. I can tell by your chats. Either that or you're drunk. Maybe both. I'm convinced. Oh, okay. Wait, you said that twice. Warby Cena is mad and definitely bi-curious. Hey, most of the haters in this chat are. They have a secret fantasy. They definitely have a secret fantasy about somebody like me bending them over. Not going to happen, though, but you really don't think our guy wouldn't be having them swing pay-per-view like every week? PPV, pay-per-view? Deport all illegals, says DMR. See, why would it? See, that's one that YouTube hid. Deport all illegals, and it hid that one. Well, I agree here on this channel, so we unhide those chats. Is the whole government Illuminati, says Dial Up 5583. No, I don't fully believe in the Illuminati. I don't think that it's just one organized group of people. I think actually things are more coincidental than people realize, but I think there's a multitude of different groups that have a lot of money that are all vying for their own different kind of influence, and they're all vying for their own agenda. And then I think in a lot of ways their agendas kind of blend in at some points and are kind of similar to each other. And that's what gives the illusion of an Illuminati, an all-powerful ruling group. But I don't believe in them strictly on the idea that it's one powerful group ruling the world. I don't believe that. I think there's a multitude of groups, more or less, I think is what it is. And I don't think they have strict control over everything, but I think they use their money to control a lot of stuff. Pay-per-view, that would deter all those criminals. Yeah. I thought that's what you were saying. You remember the pay-per-view era? That was back when WWE was cool back during everything's cooler on pay-per-view. I'm annoyed by the streaming apps. George Carlin quote, there doesn't have to be a formal conspiracy. When their interests converge, they're friends. They know what's good for them and bad for you. Yeah, exactly. See, I didn't even know George Carlin said that, but I've quoted him on this channel before, and once again, he's proven to be very wise and ahead of his time. He was like the comedic version of Alex Jones. LOL, Rodney. Yeah, any paywall would get them out. Yeah, I mean, I don't know even in what context you're talking about now. Are you talking about a paywall for chat here in this channel? eventually, if you're talking about this channel, if you're talking about America, there's the Trump gold card. If we're talking about immigration, if you're talking about this channel, all of those that have to slide to the background are the worms. If you're talking about, I have a whole different view. I have a ton of views on immigration. Mainly, we should shut it down entirely for the next 20 years and fix everything in America. But can you see my comment? It says House of All the Animals. I can see it. Good luck with you, dirty. Good luck with you, dirty pig, says Werby Cena. Yeah, your English is so broken, man. And then Shadow, you had your comment banned too. Werby is coming. He must be having a good time. Anyways, where was I at? Yeah, eventually as I keep growing on this channel, if we're talking about pay-per-view for this channel, I'll eventually do a membership kind of thing here. YouTube offers that by default. I'm just not going to turn that on while my daily streams are only averaging anywhere between 30 to 130 or 150 views consecutively. But when it grows enough, I'll do a membership thing, and then I'll start doing like members only streams throughout the week as well, just so that the chat isn't always so disruptive, But like I said, they are, try to tolerate the haters in chat. Just laugh at their low IQ nonsense. They are the cattle that really helps this stream out. So Michelle Adams. Hey, Michelle, I didn't see any of your chats, so if you were saying stuff, I'm sorry I missed it, but good night and have a great evening. All right, that's going to wrap it up. I was trying to wrap it up a few minutes ago, and you guys got me distracted. So thanks for everybody who tuned in. Be sure to subscribe right now to American Advocates for more content like this. I heard low IQ. Someone wanted me, says Yeet46. There you are. We've been looking for you all stream, Mr. Low IQ. Yeah. I don't mind the 1 million a year legals, that 100 million a century spirit of America. I think we just got to shut it down for now. Really do. We got to shut it down. We have too many people. We have too many immigrants in this country right now, and we got to shut it down. We got to fix our birth rate. We got to fix our domestic issues, our economy, our infrastructure. There's so much we got to fix internally, You don't invite someone into your house when it's a filthy house on the verge of being condemned, right? You got to fix your house first before you can let people in it. And then even then, really, do you let them stay forever? I don't know. There's a lot. I go back and forth on it to a degree, but, for the most part, it should be shut down for a while. At the very least, if we can shut it down and reopen it 20 years from now, we should start discriminating from where we allow these people in. But I've covered that before, and I'll cover that again at some point in the future. For now, I'm going to sign off. Like I said, Keystone Liberty says the next bill that needs to be passed is an immigration moratorium. Yeah, maybe the SAVE Act too, for voter fraud. But yeah, an immigration moratorium would be nice. I doubt that will happen at this point, though, sadly. All right, thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your evening. Like I said, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a like right now if you haven't already. It still will help. And if you left a chat down there that I didn't see and you're devastated about it, this will post as a video at some point in time, and you can always leave it as a comment on that video. If it's worth my time, I will respond to it. But if it's just a bunch of nonsense, then I will just laugh at it and ignore you as I probably have been doing. So thank you to everybody. Glory to America. We can still save this country. Don't give up hope on this country. This is the best nation in the world, and it can be saved. We will save it. Glory to America. God bless the USA, and God bless you.